Welcome in. My name is PJ Miller, and this is a podcast for the website, thefinalscorepdx.com. Check it out, finalscorepdx.com. You can also check me out on Twitter, PJ Miller Online, at PJ Miller Online. Hopefully this is going to be something I'm going to be doing every week. Normally I will have another guest with me, but unfortunately he was not able to come today. He had a family emergency, so we will look forward to having him in next week. And got lots of good guests today. Ben Golliver from Blazers Edge is going to be joining me. We're going to be talking about the Blazers' win last night at the Warriors. We're going to be previewing the game tonight against the Clippers. And we're going to delve in a little bit about the team up in Seattle. They put together a proposal to get a new stadium built, and they want to get a team back up in Seattle. So we'll talk to Ben about that. Also, Jack Bechta of National Football Post will be joining me as well. We're going to be going over the NFL draft that's going to be coming up here shortly. We're going to go over the combine. And we're also going to talk a little bit about Peyton Manning. Where is he at? What is going to happen to him? And Andrew Luck. How much power does a first-round draft pick have? You remember the story of Eli Manning not wanting to play in San Diego? He pushes his way to New York. San Diego trades him there, and he gets what he wants. So how much power does a first-round draft pick, a number one draft pick, and a quarterback at that, how much power does he have? Also, I know Linsanity is sweeping the nation, so Brian Mahoney from the Associated Press is going to join me. We're going to be talking about Jeremy Lin and how Carmelo Anthony is going to fit in once he starts playing. It looks like he's going to be back tomorrow. Who's going to take that last shot? That's the big question. Whose team is it going to be? Is it still going to be Jeremy Lin's? Is Carmelo going to come back and take over again? We'll talk to Brian Mahoney about that. But first off, I want to talk a little bit of Blazers.
Curry will inbound, Batum defending. Robinson wants it. He takes the inbounds pass. Felton backs up. Robinson dribbles left. Now he comes back right. Stumbles, lost the ball to Rush. A three for the game. It won't count. It was missed anyway. The game is over. Well, butter my bread and call it toast. The Blazers, losers of 12 out of their last 13 trips here to Oakland to take on the Golden State Warriors, win here without their all-star LaMarcus Aldridge.
That's right. The Blazers win last night at Golden State, 93-91. Big victory for the Blazers. They've struggled there mightily over the years. Great game from Gerald Wallace. And as everyone knows, he has struggled on the road. And we're going to talk to Ben Golliver a little bit later about that. What are your reactions to the Blazers' win last night? A great win. The guard play from the Warriors was a little shoddy, to say the least. When you look at what happened last night with Washington, or the night before with Washington, how they played against the Blazers, their guards went off, set all kinds of records, couldn't miss a shot. And then last night, Golden State, not so much. Gerald Wallace last night, 24 points, 6 rebounds, 2 steals, and a block. Nicholas Batum had another great game starting, 17 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists. Played some great defense. He also put in 2 blocks as well. And Jamal Crawford hitting some big shots in that game.
Now to Wallace out front, to Crawford. Jamal circles, now against Robinson. Crawford out front. Now tosses up a three and hit it! Jamal Crawford reigns in a three, and the Warriors want time. 1:02 remaining in the game, and Crawford put it right in the eyes of his old Seattle buddy Nate Robinson as Portland has reclaimed the advantage at 91-90.
That's right. Jamal Crawford hits the big three. That was one of those shots. As he's putting it up, everyone's saying no, no, no. He's about 2 steps behind the three-point line, over a defender in his face, although it was Nate Robinson, who's about 5'7". But Jamal Crawford lately has not been hitting those shots. No one on the Blazers has. No one has been able to hit a fourth quarter shot at a clutch time. They're 1-9 in games decided by 5 or less before last night, and they had lost 9 in a row. So that was a big shot by Jamal Crawford. They needed someone to finally step up and hit a shot, and Jamal Crawford provided that. And again, you got a lot of Crawford playing point guard, even with Felton in the game.
Everybody's expecting us to lose all these games going into All-Star break without LA. So this is a big boost for our confidence and the guys that's on the bench. Everybody stepped in and played a big part in this tonight.
Gerald Wallace, again, stepped up big time on a road game where he has struggled the whole season. And is this the boost that the Blazers need? Can they move on from here? Tonight, they have the Clippers. With Blake Griffin, Chris Paul, they are without Chauncey Billups. But that looks to be a really good game tonight. I'm going to go to the phone lines now, where I am joined by Ben Golliver from CBSSports.com and Blazers Edge. Ben, how you doing?
I'm good, PJ. How's it going?
It's going really good. Blazers coming off a big victory last night over Golden State. Game probably that most people didn't think that they would win, given the luck that they've had in Golden State.
There was all sorts of negative indicators coming into this game, whether it's been their recent play on the road, whether it's been their struggles at Oracle, whether it was the loss of LaMarcus Aldridge on Tuesday night against the Washington Wizards, or whether it was Nate McMillan's comments really saying, hey, we're not playing with pride, and a bunch of responses from his players, which didn't really seem like they were overjoyed to prove him wrong. I mean, they were very flat in that locker room after Tuesday night, and guys were saying the rah-rah stuff wasn't important. They were saying it was their fault, not Nate's, but they didn't really have a clear plan for how they were going to turn this thing around, and they went down there, and they got a little bit lucky. They caught a break. Monta Ellis was out, or at least limited significantly, I guess, with an illness, and the Blazers took full advantage. They didn't shoot the ball great, but they did enough late in the games, enough energy, enough of that pride, whether it was laying out for loose balls, whether it was just simply clearing the defensive glass, guys like Gerald Wallace and Marcus Camby stepping up. They got it done. A nice a late three from Jamal Crawford sort of provided the difference, and Nate Robinson was a little bit shaky down the stretch, and that was enough to get a crucial road win. I think this was a big win because it really mixes up the momentum here. I mean, there had been a lot of negative momentum building, and this pushes back against that. I mean, they've got a tough schedule heading into the All-Star break, but you didn't want that to go all downhill, and this was certainly a push back against that. Now, Thursday night, they got to face a really tough Los Angeles Clippers team before facing 3 more playoff teams in the Hawks, the Lakers, and the Spurs. So this win, circumstantially, really couldn't have been any bigger.
Now, when you look at the game, you talked about Monta Ellis being a little bit under the weather. You look at the backcourt of Monta Ellis and Steph Curry, and when you look at what Washington did to Portland, what do you think was the difference in this game for Portland?
Well, Washington shot the lights out, and they really took advantage of some, slower rotations from Portland. They also got into the paint and they kicked it out. Golden State did some of that. Some of the shots just simply weren't falling. I mean, they got shooters all over the court, whether it's Klay Thompson, whether it's Darrell Wright, whether it's Stephen Curry. I mean, those are 3 of the best shooters in the NBA, and really all 3 of those guys could have been potentially like 3-point shootout contestants. Ellis's game is all about getting to the basket, drawing fouls, making difficult shots, just applying constant pressure on the defense. And if you don't have him in there, Mark Jackson's solution was really to say, okay, Nate Robinson, you can really attack off the dribble. We're the guy, we're going to turn the ball over to you and see what you can do. And, he produced 21 points in 20 minutes, or 21 minutes. I mean, that's an exceptional scoring rate. The problem was he also makes some kind of poor decisions, and he also has some kind of shaky shot selection. And you can say the same thing for Monta Ellis, but Monta Ellis is much more proven in this night than Nate Robinson is. So the issue for Golden State was down the stretches, they had, Nate Robinson really kind of squandering away some possessions, whether it was, with, some, ill-advised shots or some really kind of poor decisions off the dribble. You look at their last possession. I mean, they couldn't get a good shot off because he's fumbling all over himself as he's falling to the ground. I mean, that's sort of the story of his career, where he can do some spectacular things, but he's not able to really put it together and make the winning plays. So I think that's kind of what happened last night. I mean, you look at that Tuesday game in hindsight. I mean, the Wizards took full advantage of the Aldridge absence, and they just, couldn't miss. They all had their confidence going. They were, scoring really from, three different guys in Wall and Crawford and Young. And if you have that much production from outside, this Portland team is going to have a hard time keeping up.
Yeah, you look at what Washington did last night against the Clippers, and they lost by 15, coming off that big win over Portland. So definitely some inconsistency there for Washington.
Oh, no doubt. I mean, they're a terrible team. I mean, Portland never should have lost to them, even without Aldridge. I mean,
and he won't. He's a disaster.
7 games all season. They don't have the experience, the depth, the proven consistency. And they've got a couple of nice young pieces in John Wall and JaVale McGee if he's got his head on square, that day. But, past those guys, I mean, that's a roster with a lot more questions than answers. And you saw what the Clippers did. They just really locked in late in that game. I mean, that was a game, for at least the first half, but, they just turned the screws. Chris Paul got into the paint, setting up easy shots. I mean, and really the points were just flowing. Washington's defense isn't good enough to stop it when those guys have it going. I mean, that's an exceptional offense when they're really clicking. When Chris Paul is on, when Blake Griffin is finishing at the rim, I mean, good luck stopping those guys.
So moving on tonight, the Blazers take on the Clippers. They're going to be without LaMarcus Aldridge again tonight. Is that correct?
He's doubtful right now. I mean, he said he just got out of a walking boot and crutches on Twitter, so I assume that means he's a ways away. They said maybe he's hopeful for this weekend, but we won't know a full, firm injury report until at least pregame from the Blazers. They didn't have a shoot-around this morning.
So what do you look for the Blazers to do without Aldridge to guard Blake Griffin? How are they going to attack the Clippers?
And they're probably going to have to try to pack the paint. I mean, they're going to have to play much better interior defense than they have been playing. They've been giving up a lot of dunks. Without Aldridge's length in there, they're really a different team defensively. They're going to have to ask a lot from both Nicholas Batum and Gerald Wallace to be really active on the weak side and helping. They're probably going to have to double on Griffin if he does get the ball in any sort of isolation situations. Without Chauncey Billups there due to his season-ending injury, it is a little bit easier to defend the Clippers because he's a guy who can kind of hang out on the weak side and bury you with that that weak side three-pointer, or you can draw fouls as your defense is trying to rotate out to him. So they don't have him, but Mo Williams has been very productive off their bench, and they can score in a lot of different ways. And they've been playing pretty good basketball here. Chris Paul sort of worked his way into shape, I think, over the first month of the season, and now you're really just kind of hoping for an off night from him. I mean, really, Portland's going to have to get better shooting themselves, or they're going to struggle. You look at the Matthews, Batum, Felton combination. I think they shot a combined 13 for 40 last night. That's not going to get it done against a good team. I mean, you can steal a win against lottery teams like the Warriors. If you do shoot that, if you play defense at the right time, but going against the Clippers, you're going to have to put up more points than that. You're going to have to shoot the ball a lot better than that.
With the Clippers coming into town and the Blazers not really having that inside presence, do you see any changes in the lineup or the rotation?
No, it's all big questions. I mean, they played it kind of smaller last night. Nate's kind of done two different things in the second half of the Wizards game. He went a little bit bigger at to start the second half, and then he put Matthews in the starting lineup. I'm not sure we're going to have a full read on that. It's going to be very difficult to guard Blake Griffin with Gerald Wallace. Absolutely, you can't do that for too many minutes. But I think Nate has not been very clear in sort of explaining his philosophy in terms of what his starting lineups are. If you don't have LaMarcus Aldridge, you're going to be digging yourself out a hole, sort of whatever combination that you go with. This game's more about getting bench production from whoever is coming off the bench and having sort of consistent play throughout 4 quarters, more than it is whatever the initial matchups are, because those matchups are going to obviously favor the Clippers when Portland's playing without one of its all-star and Los Angeles is obviously playing with 2 very high-quality all-stars.
What do you think the Blazers' chances are tonight?
I mean, they've got a decent chance. It's tough. The biggest factor here is that you expended a lot of energy digging out a late win on the second half of a back-to-back, and now you've got to go to the third rung of the back-to-back-to-back. So they did get a break, and then the Clippers played a little bit later last night, and then it is a back-to-back for them too. So I guess it could be worse, but this one's going to be a toss-up. Portland's going to have to play with the energy, and also just sort of the like, to borrow a phrase from McMillan, the pride. I mean, they're going to have to be laying out for loose balls. They're going to have to really be making life difficult for all of the Clippers' perimeter players to sort of, beat the will out of them a little bit. If this turns into a game where, Chris Paul is able to get comfortable, Mo Williams is able to be comfortable off the dribble, Blake Griffin, gets things going a little bit early, watch out. I mean, we haven't really seen the full Lob City effect yet this year. Although the Clippers did sort of blow out the Blazers down in L.A., the Blazers just played really flat against them. So, if the Blazers don't have that energy, that kind of thing could happen again. The highlights really could stack up. But, Portland's in any game at home, and they've played very well at home, with the recent losses to both the Rockets and the Wizards accepted. So we'll see. I mean, they're in the game. It's not going to be a for sure, Clippers victory. I mean, these guys are going in thinking that they have a decent chance because of their really quality home record.
Big news coming out of Seattle. I saw you tweet about it a little bit earlier at Blazers Edge. That Seattle is proposing to build a new stadium. Paul Allen put out a statement about it, saying that it's exciting to think that the NBA coming back to Seattle. Is there any possibility that, or should the Blazer fans worry about any Blazers moving up north?
I don't know. I mean, personally, there's been no indication that's going to happen. Paul Allen's denied, sort of wanting to sell the team every time he gets asked that question. They're locked into a lease here in Portland. So, I mean, I think at this point, that's a non-issue, and I don't think that's what Seattle's trying to angle for at all. You look at, the two franchises that are sort of most at risk. That's going to be the Sacramento Kings and the New Orleans Hornets. Both those situations are tricky. Seattle can't have a team even if they have an arena without a franchise, right? I mean, you got to have both. And right now, the Kings are working desperately. The Sacramento is working desperately to keep the Kings in Sacramento. And in New Orleans, I mean, David Stern has said time and again he's very committed to keeping the team there. I think that he doesn't want to deal with the backlash. Stern has said time and again he's very committed to keeping the team there. I think that he doesn't want to deal with the backlash that would come from moving a team out of New Orleans after Katrina, and he's waiting for a local owner down there. So it's not totally clear to me, even if they did have this arena, completely smoothly. And, right now, I mean, it's, they've got the proposal out there, but, a proposal is not worth as much as, a real fully funded plan and then, actually boots on the ground building the arena. So, to me, I think we're still probably getting ahead of ourselves and getting excited about the NBA's return to Seattle. But certainly I can understand why anyone up here would want them back. It was an amazing rivalry. But I think that Paul Allen's comfortable being the Portland end of that rivalry rather than wanting to be the Seattle end of it.
All right, Ben, thank you much. Ben Golliver, Blazers Edge at CBSSports.com. Thank you very much for coming on. I really appreciate it, man.
Oh, yeah, anytime, man. Take care.
Later. So there's Ben coming on talking about the Blazers. Wanted to go in a little bit with the Seattle getting a new team. I got a sound clip here from the mayor of Seattle talking about public money for the team and the new arena.
This project will be paid for by rent on the facility, by the significant private investment that's coming forward, and by the taxes that we would not receive but for the construction of that facility. So we are not putting public dollars into this.
That's a really good thing for Seattle. If they don't have to vote on it, then I think that there's a good chance that a team could end up in Seattle. The problem has always been in Seattle that they don't want to fund a new stadium. They already have Safeco, they have Quest Field, they already have a Key Arena, but they don't want to pay to have another one. If they can get private financing, use taxes that are only going to become because of this, those are the things that are going to make this happen. And you heard Ben talk a little bit about the rivalry between the Blazers and Seattle. That's something that has been missing. And I also think that it hurts the Blazers as far as scheduling as well. You heard Nate McMillan talk about how whenever they play the Wizards or the Warriors, that they always seem to be playing them on the second of a back-to-back. And it would be nice to not have to travel so far all the time to play your games, to have another team up in the Northwest so that you're getting teams on the second of a back-to-back. If you look at the Blazers' schedules, they don't get a lot of teams on the back-to-back. They get a lot of teams on the first end of a back-to-back. They'll play here, and then they'll go down to Sacramento. But you don't have a lot of games where they're playing in L.A. and then flying up here. It doesn't happen a lot. And I think with the Northwest team, that will help the Blazers' schedule, not only for teams coming in, but also their own schedule, not having to necessarily fly out as far all the time. Being closer to home. So that'll be interesting. Keep an eye on that. We'll be talking about that as it progresses. But, like Ben said, it's probably a few years away from happening. But with teams like New Orleans, Sacramento, Charlotte, all really struggling right now, there's a real possibility that someone moves. And even if the stadium is a few years out, remember, they still have Key Arena. So they could get a team playing Key Arena until the new stadium is built or the new arena is built. So definitely some movement possible in the NBA, and I really do not see them doing any sort of expansion at this point. There's not going to be a new team in Seattle. It will be a franchise moving, which is kind of weird because when you think about Seattle and how upset they were when the Sonics moved and became the Thunder, the Oklahoma City Thunder, and now they're going to do that to somebody else. It's just kind of ironic how upset they were and how it's kind of turning around, and now they may be doing it to somebody else. We're going to move on. We're going to talk about some NFL. Not too long until the NFL draft is coming up. Lots of talk about where's Andrew Luck going to go. Is he going to go number 1? Does that mean Manning is going to be moved? Lots of news coming out about a 4th surgery for Peyton Manning. And we all know that there are HIPAA laws, and people aren't supposed to be able to talk about what you're doing, surgeries, your health issues, anywhere where you go for a doctor. People aren't supposed to talk about that. The doctors aren't supposed to talk about that. The teams aren't supposed to talk about that. But yet all this information is coming out about Peyton Manning. Is it something that the team is releasing, trying to pave the way for, if they release him, to give more fire to that? Is Peyton Manning actually done? 4 surgeries on his neck, all on the right side. He's had his neck fused. That's a lot to deal with. And he plays a position where you take a lot of hard shots. It's not a running back where you're pounding every single game, but you're standing there and you're getting hit from the backside while you're trying to throw a ball. That creates a lot of torque on his neck. Is that something that he should take a chance on? Should he just call it a career? Say, hey, it's not worth the rest of my life or being paralyzed or having any of those kind of issues. And then, of course, Jack Betchta is going to join us here in a little bit. We're going to be talking about the NFL Combine. Talk about number 1 picks, what kind of power they have. I am happy to go to the phone lines now, where I am joined by Jack Betchta, active NFL agent and writer for the National Football Post. Thanks for coming on, Jack.
Hey, CJ, how you doing, buddy?
Good. So NFL Combine is going to be coming up, the NFL Draft, not too far away. What are teams looking for at the NFL Draft or at the NFL Combine?
Well, really at the NFL Combine, you have about 300 plus guys coming in to be tested in the 40 short shuttles, position drills, et cetera. But really, the number 1 reason now for the Combine is the physical. We want to make sure, the NFL teams want to make sure that the car they're buying doesn't have a salvage title. They want to make sure, guys' knees and backs and elbows and shoulders are all working. They want to take a really good look at them first and foremost. That's really the main reason for the Combine. Secondly, the 40 is still a measurement that's been in place for almost 30 years now. So not only can you compare a player at a position against, their peer group for that year, you can go back the full 30 years. So it's a good baseline to see who has the minimum physical skill set to play a certain position. The interviews now are only 15 minutes long per team, so it's kind of like speed dating. The teams don't really get anything out of that, or as much out of it as they used to, just because they're so quick. They used to be as long as they want to. There used to be no time frame on it. So it's more data collection than anything else. And then behind the scenes, teams will start talking to agents about free agents.
With the interviews being so much shorter, are they doing a lot more background on players, calling former coaches, associates?
Yeah, and that goes on all year long. It's really the area scout's job to collect that data, to be really good and comprehensive in doing and getting the background. When there are players that there are concerns with, that they do have concerns with, then those players kind of get, they get a little bit pushed further under the microscope.
When we look at players in the draft, Andrew Luck probably going to be the number one pick. Questions about Manning and what's going to happen with him. How much power does Andrew Luck have to go where he wants to?
Well, we only seen that done a few times. Once we saw the power play by Eli Manning and his agent. He didn't know he was going to end up in New York. People forget the Chargers did draft him, then traded the pick. So at the end of the day, did he have the power to go where he wanted to? No one really knows for sure. And Andrew and his advisors, they're a different group. They're going to they're not going to fight the system. He's a very appreciative young man of everything that's coming his way. And, he's going to make the best out of any situation. That's my understanding of how, his team's going to manage it. So he doesn't have as much leverage to say, hey, I want to go play for this team or that team. If he wanted to make that power play, he probably would have chosen another agent.
You went to Texas A&M Kingsville, and you were a double major in finance and real estate. How did you end up getting into being an agent and a writer?
Well, when I graduated college, and when I went to Texas A&M Kingsville, it was Texas A&M University at the time, and while I was there, we had about 3 or 4 guys get drafted every year. One of my good friends and teammates was Darrell Green, who played 20 years in the league for the Redskins, and he was a first-round pick. So, for example, he was a guy that I saw, go through the process. And after I graduated, I went to work in the investment business. And, just for the heck of it, just to stay close to football, I got certified as an agent. And, back then you filled out a paper, sent in a check for $500 and you were certified. No, that was pretty much it. Then you just go find a client. It was kind of more of the Wild Wild West days. But there was enough players coming out of my school every year. Although small, it was producing a lot of athletes, kind of like back in the days when Portland State was doing something similar around the same time. I could just go back there and help some down-the-line guys that eventually, one made it, then 2, then 4. And it was a sideline that kind of grew into a full-time business. I'm one of the co-founders of NationalFootballPost.com, and basically that came together through some NFL executives who were either between jobs or, off contract, decided, let's kind of create a Wall Street Journal type website, specific for NFL news, content, intel, data, information, have high-level discussions about the NFL in which we can educate fans on what's really going on behind the scenes. So I contribute once a week, for the NationalFootballPost.com.
Commissioner has talked about maybe there being expansion if LA comes into play. How much money does that bring in for the NFL if they were to expand or get into the LA market?
Well, I think you got to remember that there are already teams or games televised in the LA market, so it's not like it's a virgin market. If they were to sell a brand new franchise, it would be hard to have 33 teams for one. And the commissioner did say that there has been no discussion of a brand new franchise, but there has been discussions about the LA market and the viability and the hope that, we could put a team there at some point, whether it be Oakland or the Chargers or, who knows, Jacksonville, who knows. But I think in terms of revenues, I think if you probably took the overall revenues that the league is making right now and maybe add another 5 to 8%, which is very significant. We're talking probably over who knows, it could mean an extra $500 to $800 million a year for the league.
Yeah, so that's a big incentive for the NFL to get there. So you talked about a couple of the teams that might end up there. Are there any other teams that are in limbo, or teams that people might think could be moved there?
Well, there's a lot of speculation that the Vikings are a candidate, but the owner is doing everything he can to keep the team there. The Vikings stadium right now is probably one of the worst in football. It's a horrible, horrible venue. It's not bad watching the game, but just kind of getting in and out the hallways. They desperately need a new stadium, and the governor's trying to make that happen. So I think they're far enough along that that something may happen there. And the league and everybody, all the other owners want the Vikings to stay in Minnesota. Nobody wants them to be the LA Vikings. It's just not good for football and for the NFL Shield. Years ago there used to be talk about the Saints, and then with the resurrection of their program, the money that's went into the Superdome down there, they're not going anywhere anytime soon. And maybe outside of Jacksonville, who's really struggling in their market, and the Chargers are a candidate probably later than sooner, and the wild card's probably Oakland. I mean, they're a team that they always felt they had rights to the LA market, and they wouldn't be abandoning a market, and that the 49ers would be there. They're kind of the big kid on the block all of a sudden. And so that would be a decent move in that they already have an established fan base there. But outside of that, I don't see any other candidates.
Circling back to Peyton Manning, word came out that he had an extra surgery, a fourth one on his neck. Do you think these types of releases or things like this could be something from the team, or is this coming from somewhere outside of the organization?
Well, you'd have to ask, I think it was maybe Don Banks or somebody who broke that story at SI. And I think there's a lot of people who knew about that surgery. It's not just Peyton and his doctor. There was a lot of people that knew. I think the former brass of the Colts knew by August. They just didn't feel it was their place to tell anybody. So I don't think this was groundbreaking news. I heard something about it, that he got a third surgery in June or July. So, for the public it's new, but I think it's been out there. I don't think the team put it out there. I don't think there's a diabolical, ulterior motive that it's out there now. It's just, finally somebody from the media caught wind of something that's been in circulation at the highest level for a long time.
All right, Jack, thank you very much for coming on. Jack Betchta of the National Football Post. Thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Yep. Good day. Good being on. Thank you.
Thank you. So there's Jack Betchta, National Football Post. If you haven't been on there, go check it out. He has a lot of great articles. He talks about the Combine, what it really means to NFL teams. It's no longer about the sit down with the players. You hear so much about how GMs and coaches like to sit down with the players and get a feel for who they are. But it's becoming less and less than that. They're putting time restrictions on those. I believe it's at 15 minutes now. So they have to do a lot of homework. Now it's just more about getting their stats at the Combine. How high do they jump? How fast do they run their 40? And they have to do a lot of background on these players. They have to talk to former coaches, assistant coaches, and find out who these players actually are, which makes it a lot more difficult for front offices to know who's a good guy, who comes from a troubled past. Is it something that they've overcome? Or are they still mired in those issues. Because if they can't really talk to the players for all that long, they can't get a real good feel for those kind of things. So the NFL draft is going to be coming up in April. We're going to have a lot more on that. We'll be talking some local, some Seahawks. What are they going to do? There's been some rumors that maybe they're trying to get Peyton Manning. Is that something that they're trying to do? I'm sure that a first-round pick would maybe be involved with that. Or would they be willing to wait and see if he gets cut by Indianapolis? Would he maybe come there? Would that be a good idea for Seattle? Will their line be able to hold? Or will that be too much punishment for him to take if he comes to Seattle? Lynn Mania, Lynn Sanity. Jeremy Lin has kind of taken over in the NBA, pop culture. People all over the world are writing about him. London, Taiwan, Great Britain, China. All these places are writing about Jeremy Lin and the story that has become Linsanity. What do you think about it? You have, I'm sure, have heard the story by now. Jeremy Lin, second-year player. He was drafted, or he was actually picked up by Golden State last year. He went to camp with Dallas, but decided to sign with Golden State after they gave him a 2-year guaranteed deal. He was cut during this offseason so that they could try to make a signing of DeAndre Jordan, which ended up not happening, so they basically lost Lin for nothing. Lin signed with Houston and was cut on Christmas Eve from Houston. He was picked up by New York and was probably days away from being cut before Mike D'Antoni decided to give him some playing time. 7 games ago, he played in his first significant minutes. New York won. He started the next day, and the New York winning streak is at 7. And this is a kid who comes from Harvard. He doesn't come from a basketball pedigree. He doesn't come from Kentucky. He doesn't come from Arizona. Doesn't come from Duke or North Carolina. He comes from Harvard, an Ivy League school, known more for academics than basketball play. And he is actually from Palo Alto, which is where Stanford is at. And he didn't receive one Division I scholarship offer. So he decided to go to Harvard, where he thought he would get more playing time than if he stayed at his hometown Stanford. This is a great story. It's one of those stories that transcend sports. This is the reason why people like sports. This is why people who don't necessarily like sports like sports. Because you got a guy who overcame, no one thought he could do it, got cut 2 times, and stepped in when he got the opportunity and made the most of it. He's faced some of the biggest players. He showed up Kobe Bryant in New York on the biggest stage, went for a career-high 38 points, outdueled Kobe Bryant, who arguably is the best player in the league. Hit a game winner against Toronto. And the play before that had a 3-point play, fouled with the and one, so it was a 3-point. They were down 3 at the time, so he tied it and then won it with a 3-pointer at the end of the game. It's just a great story about this kid. I'm very happy to go to the phone lines now, where I am joined by Brian Mahoney, writer for the Associated Press. Brian, how crazy is Linsanity in New York right now?
Yeah, it's been pretty crazy for a good week now. The Knicks were in a lot of trouble before they turned to him. Obviously, they haven't lost since then, and they were high expectations coming into this season that weren't being met. So now they are, and the fans are really into this because of the impact he's made.
What has he done to New York to create them, to put them on this 7-game win streak?
Well, it's pretty simple. He's been able to run the Mike D'Antoni's offense, which is essentially, a lot of use of pick and rolls and everything. And the Knicks tried to run the point guard during the season and just couldn't grasp it right. And the shooters weren't getting the ball in the right spots, and the offense was really struggling. And Jeremy Lin has come in and been able to do that, make shots for himself, create for others, and suddenly they're scoring again, and it's made a huge difference. Very simple thing.
Is this something that he can maintain throughout the year?
I think at this point you have to believe he can. When it first started, people said, well, he's not surprised he wasn't scouted properly, or they were only playing bad teams. But 7 games, it's a pretty legitimate run. And if it was going to get to him by now, he was going to slow down. I think it would have happened. So his numbers might decrease, but I think he's going to continue to play well.
So Carmelo Anthony's going to be back on Friday. Lots of questions about how they're going to interact, what's going to be the pecking order, who's going to take the last shot. How do you see that unfolding?
Well, it is the one question that's left. We really don't know. Obviously the offense is run pretty nicely now with Jeremy Lin without Carmelo being here. Carmelo favors a kind of a different style a little bit. He's more of an isolation guy than a pick and roll guy, and so it's going to be interesting. I think, if it comes down to a last shot, Carmelo's had a lot of success in the NBA in that regard. I think you would go to him, but what happens in the first 47 minutes of the game, that's what people are interested in seeing.
Okay, now the question everybody wants to know, what's the best nickname you've heard for Jeremy Lin?
I like a lot of them. I know they look kind of cheesy to a lot of people and everything, but when the newspapers had Happy Valentine's Day, I thought that was kind of funny. He said today he likes Super Nintendo. I think they're all kind of creative. I really do.
Yeah, he's a Harvard grad. He's kind of a video game nerd, so that Super Nintendo one makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, he did seem to like that, and you're right, it kind of fits with what you would expect out of him.
Now, should people expect to see him on All-Star Weekend? He wasn't voted for the freshman-sophomore challenge, but should they expect to see him?
Well, he'll be there in some kind of role, and honestly, I'm surprised the NBA hasn't found a way to get him in the Rising Stars game. I understand that when the coaches voted for the rosters to be picked, he wasn't playing very much, and there was no reason. But what he's done since then, how explosive this story has become, he's one of the top 10, top 20 first and second year players in the league right now, and he should definitely be in that game. But they'll find something for him to do on Saturday night.
Yeah, you got to think the ratings just for him being in that game would probably double.
It would certainly help. I mean, watching him, potentially throw an alley-oop pass to Blake Griffin or something like that, or all those playing the same backcourt with Rick Rubio. So many different kind of things that people would tune into. And like I say, I'm a little surprised the NBA hasn't done it. But again, they'll make sure he's there in some way, I would think.
Okay, I got a clip for you. LeBron James today had some comments about Cleveland. I wanted to play these for you and get your reaction.
I don't hold grudges. I hold them a little bit, but I don't hold them that long. And he said what he said out of anger. He probably would want to take that back, but I made a mistake too. And some things I would want to take back as well. So you learn from your mistakes and move on.
Could LeBron James go back to Cleveland and play?
I guess anything's possible. Obviously this story's getting a lot of play. I think, he answered the only way you really can answer it and just basically say, nothing's impossible, never say never. And, do I expect him to go back to Cleveland? I can't see why he would if Miami continues to do what they're expected to do over the next few years. And it's a great city there, and, they'll be able to pay him the most money. You would think he would never leave there. But then again, a lot of people thought he would never leave Cleveland either. So, like I say, I understand why he said it, but I wouldn't look for him to be there anytime soon.
Do you think that there would be a lot of issues from the fans if he came back? Would they be mad at management for doing that?
I think, it would go pretty smoothly, actually. He's from there, and it would be at least 4 to 5 years before he came back. It's anger goes away by then, even though that kind of anger they had, and rightfully so, when he left. They would welcome him back. You'd be talking about having one of the best players in the NBA, a native son, and it would be a great story if it happened. I just have a hard time imagining that it ever would.
Do you think he would do a decision too if he decided to go back there?
As bad as the decision one was, maybe that's an interesting way to do it. He had pokes of fun at himself, but certainly I think the way that went, it wouldn't be the first thing you would think of.
All right, Brian, thank you very much. Brian Mahoney of the Associated Press. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for talking some Linsanity with us.
Sure, thank you.
So there's Brian Mahoney, Associated Press, talking about Jeremy Lin, New York, the hype that is around Jeremy Lin. Is it justified? What about all this comparison to Tim Tebow? What is that about? I understand that maybe he does have some religion and some faith, but I don't know if I'd really compare Jeremy Lin to Tim Tebow. Tim Tebow, everyone knew about. He didn't come out of nowhere. Just the hype, I think, is the same. But Jeremy Lin's a great story. He's a guy who came from nothing. And I don't know, even for most people who, if you're not from New York, hate the Knicks, I don't know how you can't root for the guy. I can tell you that I probably will not watch the Rookie-Sophomore Challenge, but if he's playing, there's probably a good chance that I'm going to watch it. Same thing with Knicks games. I don't really like the Knicks. But if he's playing, I'm now going to watch the Knicks games any chance that I get. Just because I want to see how he's doing. I want to see if he can maintain this style of play, if he can maintain this level of play. He's a good kid, and I hope nothing but good things for him. When you have a story like that in the NBA where you have so many people dealing with drug issues, control issues, it's good to have a story like this that's been something positive. Speaking of negative stories, Allen Iverson is trying to get back in the NBA. He said he's willing to play in the D League or in one of the Venezuelan leagues or one of the minor leagues in the area. Puerto Rico. Should Allen Iverson do that? He's 36 years old, so, I mean, he's older, but he's not past an age where he could still play. He hasn't played at all this year. Do you think his team should take a chance on Allen Iverson? Should he come back and play in the D League and try to make his way to the NBA? I think Allen Iverson should just hang it up. It's just that time for him now. He wants to go out on his own terms, and I understand that. But there's no sense in coming back and making it even worse for you. And I don't know that you're going to find a team that wants to deal with the drama of Allen Iverson. He's already said that he doesn't like to practice. He's had some financial issues, which could be part of why he wants to come back. He had over $800,000 garnished from his bank account because he failed to pay a jewelry maker. $800,000 on jewelry. That's a lot of money. Sounds like a guy who doesn't always make the best decisions. So I don't think he'll be able to find a team that will take a chance unless it was one of the teams trying to make a championship run and they have a point guard go out. But even then, that's still going to be a tough pill to swallow to bring Allen Iverson in. And he talks about wanting to be a role model for young players and have them understand the mistakes that he made, and he can teach them the right choices. You know what, Allen Iverson? Maybe you should have made the right choices in the first place and you wouldn't be in this position. If you weren't such a head case, if you would practice hard and done the things that you needed to do, you would probably still be playing in the NBA. No one has ever doubted your talent. You're an MVP, multiple All-Star, and you probably still got something left in the tank. But at this point, it's not enough to deal with the emotional and the outside issues that you bring to a team. So you've kind of brought this upon yourself. So that'll be it for the first podcast. I'm going to try to be doing these every Thursday. So make sure you check out the website, thefinalscorepdx.com. Thefinalscorepdx.com. You can follow me on Twitter, PJ Miller Online. PJ Miller Online. Big thanks to Ben Golliver. You can follow him on Twitter, Blazers Edge, at Blazers Edge. Jack Betchta from National Football Post. Great stuff about the NFL draft. the Combine. And Brian C. Mahoney. If you don't follow him on Twitter, at Brian C. Mahoney, BriancMahoney, Brian C. Mahoney. He's a great follow. He's on the front lines for the Linsanity stuff going on right now. He's based out of New York, follows the Knicks and the Nets. So give him a follow. You won't be disappointed. All right, thanks again. I am PJ Miller. And I thank you for listening. And hope to bring you another podcast next week. Have some more great guests.